Welcome to the 24th episode of the Student Recap Podcast. Today I will be talking about Texas French Symposium with my former French teacher, Miss Watson. Now, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Miss Watson, otherwise known as Madame Watson. I've been here at this school, John Cooper School, for 6 years now, and love my job. And I've been participating in Texas French Symposium for about close to 40 years.
Now, would you like to explain what Texas French Symposium is to the audience?
Texas French Symposium is a statewide French contest. It is for all high school students taking French in the state of Texas. It is a contest with about 16 different events that range from academic to music and art.
Now, I'm obviously involved in a lot of different activities, and obviously Texas French Symposium might seem like it's only about French, but there's actually music events and drama events that people that aren't necessarily the best in French can still participate and help their school get points. And I would also like to add that Texas French Symposium, it really is a bonding moment because there's not that many French speakers like when you just look around you. But then there's this massive conference where you see all the French speakers in Texas. Not all of them, but a large amount of them, and it really just makes a community.
Mm-hmm. That is so true, and that's one of the things that my students have always enjoyed about it because, like you said, there are Spanish students everywhere. We live in Texas. But to go to a weekend, a 2-day contest in different parts of the state of Texas, and you're surrounded by up to 1,000 French-speaking students, it's really quite fun, and you have a lot in common with them.
Now, what is the process like for preparing for the competition, not only for teachers but also for students?
Well, for the teachers, we start right away. I am on the board of directors. I have been for about 10, 12 years. And we start right away in September and invite teachers all over the state of Texas to participate. And there's a very simple process. It's very streamlined, and they RSVP, and then they register their school, of course, getting permission from their administration. And then they start registering their students as they get the students excited and interested in the contest. For the students, there are just a multitude of ways of preparing depending on what kind of event you're going to enter. If it's going to be an academic event like memorizing a poem, they'll start working with the teacher on the pronunciation and then eventually build to the emotion and the hand gestures of performing the poem. All the while, of course, while they are memorizing the poem. Prose is very similar, it's just not memorized. They're learning how to read a story and tell a story written by a French author. All of this, of course, is in French. And then there's drama, and there's, as you mentioned, there's singing, songs that have been recorded in French. It's modern songs, it's traditional folk songs. Band students, orchestra students, of course, are very interested because they play music written by French composers. And then there's art. There's just seven or eight events in art, and every symposium has a theme. And so the artwork has to incorporate the theme of symposium. For example, last year it was obviously the Olympics, which were held in Paris. So all of the artwork, the comic strips that are written, everything has to incorporate the theme of the current symposium.
Yeah, about the art. So I actually had one of my colleagues, he gave me his art piece for a Cooper French Symposium, which is a smaller thing that we do within the school to get the kids prepared for when they actually go to Texas French Symposium in high school. But now I have a little drawing of the Eiffel Tower with the Olympic rings because that was the theme last year. Mm-hmm. And as for the events that I'm doing, I believe I'm doing sight reading, extemporaneous speaking, instrumental solo, and Bach. Now, Bach, it's a lot like Quiz Bowl because you have to know a lot about French culture and you need to just be good at memorizing information. So it's the French equivalent of Quiz Bowl, I would say.
Yes, yes, and Trivial Pursuit. I mean, you have to know everything. You have to be able to answer questions in French. And then, like you said, there are some questions that are just simple trivia. French history, French culture, French personalities, and the Francophone world, not just France. So everything from Canada all the way to the many countries in Africa and the islands in the Caribbean. So it's a vast array of topics that you have to prepare for the baccalaureate.
And so for extemp, I actually have been practicing by listening to France 24 Live, which is a French news channel, and then after that, I kind of talk about it to myself to like repeat what I've heard, and it's just really helpful because I'm getting my comprehension up and I'm speaking more.
That's perfect. And you also just hear the flow of the language, and just when you're around it, you just you kind of emulate it, and you just start having that same flow and that same accent. So, and the comprehension, of course, helps you tremendously listening, and then you can just speak. It just is like magic.
Now, obviously this is a competition, so would you like to explain how schools can win the Texas French Symposium?
Okay, great question. So every event has preliminaries, semifinals, and then the final round. And you get a point for instance, if you were in extemporaneous speaking and you advanced from preliminaries to semifinals, you get a point. Then you compete again in semifinals, and if you advance, you get another set of points from semifinals to finals. And then you compete again, and if you win, you get a certain amount of points based on first, second, third, all the way to sixth place. Obviously, the points are higher for academic events than they would be for art or music. For example, singing in French is beautiful and wonderful, but it's not a vast knowledge of French that is needed, like extemporaneous speaking or participating in the Bach. So we say that the academic events get more points than the art and the music do. But every level gets points. Then the points are put in each student's, quote, bank. So you would have X amount of points that you have earned. In the meantime, those points are going to your school. And at the end, at the awards ceremony, we announce the top 10 students that have the highest amount of points for themselves. And then we announce the top 10 schools that have accumulated the highest amount of points for the entire school. It's very competitive, and we are on a mission to win first place this year because we've come in second place the last 2 years. I have to say that I'm very impressed. This year we have a good amount of students, 39. 40 used to be the limit for many, many years. 40 students was the limit. In the last 3 years, I believe, we have extended the limit of students that can participate. But we have gone here at Cooper, we have gone from about 19, 20, 21 students, I believe, last year to this year 39. So I'd like to believe that it's because we started 2 years ago the miniature version of Texas French Symposium in the middle school classes. We call it Cooper French Symposium. So they get experience competing in 7th and 8th grade, and of course it builds the enthusiasm for wanting to participate in the upper school. And now we have 39 students, so I can't wait.
Yeah, it really is surprising that the number basically doubled of people who entered in Texas French Symposium. But also, I think it's partially, you were saying about the mini Texas French Symposium here, because everybody got excited, and then the high schoolers, they would talk to us about like the competition and everything. So it's really like a stairway for us to get excited for the competition. And I'm pretty sure a lot of students aren't just doing one event. They're in a variety of events, and that's really helpful because then we have a higher chance of getting first place.
Right, and when I used to take high school students for many years, for 35 years, I always had the students compete in more than one event, and every single possible event that we could register in, I filled those spots. For example, if you can take 4 students in level 3 poetry, I had 4 students filled. I didn't just take 2 students or 3 students. I filled up every single spot so that we could not only have as many students participate as possible, but also have that chance of winning as many points as possible.
Yeah, so Cooper, I mean, it doesn't have the biggest French program, I would say, because there's obviously some other schools such as St. John's or the Woodlands High School that are massive schools that really focus on this. But I think with the enthusiasm that we have here, we have a good chance.
Yes, absolutely. I was super impressed. Even last year, you have to kind of look at the numbers. And like I said, I'm on the board of directors, so I see all the numbers. But yes, St. John's, that has a bigger school enrollment and more students competing, with their almost double, if not more than double, amount of students that they took last year. They won first place, but we came in second place with half the amount of students, which in my opinion screams success, because that means the fewer amount of students that we brought did very well.
Yes.
And won a lot of points, even though we had other schools that maybe came in fourth place or seventh place or 10th place that had more students. I know that they had more students. I believe the Woodlands High School, a neighboring school, entered more students than we did, but we did so well and prepared so well and were so successful that we got more points and ended up winning second place.
And I think one person in particular inspired the Texas French Symposium team last year, Carlos Calderon, because he's a really good actor. I think he won most of the acting and drama events that he was in, correct?
And singing.
And singing.
Yes, he also did. He had a bunch of enthusiasm. My very first year here at Cooper, he was in my 8th grade class, my very first 8th grade class. And of course, in the 8th grade, even though we can't participate as a middle school, I would prepare the students telling them about it. This was before we had our little miniature Cooper French Symposium. And so Carlos's enthusiasm for studying the French culture and this French language, coupled with his drama skills and his singing skills, I think really he built a lot of enthusiasm, or he created a lot of enthusiasm in the upper school. And it was actually his idea to start the Cooper French Symposium. So chapeau Carlos, yeah.
Now to close. Mm-hmm. To everybody that might want to study French, could you give them like some recommendations of why they should do it and why they should get involved with the language?
Yes, I know we live in Texas, so everybody thinks Spanish, which I get. That's totally understandable. But as I've told my students for years and years and years, if you want to pursue a career where you're going to probably stay in Texas or in the southern part of the United States, of course, and you're going to be dealing with people personally. You want to be, for instance, a doctor. So you're going to have clients, obviously, patients, obviously, that are here in Texas. Then Spanish is not a bad thing to study. It's a good thing to study. But there are so many jobs that are available, and they have offices overseas. I can just list numerous ones. I'll just pick on one. I have a friend whose husband, they worked in Odessa, West Texas, for many years. He worked for Exxon. Spanish, of course, very common in West Texas. And as he grew in his career in Exxon, all of a sudden he was given the opportunity, a promotion, to work in a plant in an office in Chad, in Africa. So all of a sudden, poof, after all those years of being in West Texas, he needed to speak French. He needed to learn French like in months. He had training very quickly. I have friends that have been in the Peace Corps that thought they lived in Texas, they should speak Spanish, and then they were assigned in Zaire. She had to learn French immediately. Many students that do international law or any kind of international business, because French is the second language of the world. Even the Olympics, it's the official language of the Olympics. Mm-hmm. So the Winter Olympics will be in Italy next year. Oh, yeah. All announcements are made in English, of course, and in French, and then the language of the host country, which next year will be Italy. So French is used worldwide, and I don't think in Texas we sometimes realize that until you get out and go into your careers that you pursue in college and past college.
one thing to clarify, Zaire is now the Congo,
Yes.
correct? Because
Yes.
Zaire, that was actually a weird autocratic state in the 70s.
Yes.
But nowadays it's a different country name.
Right, absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for coming on to the Student Recap podcast, and we'll see you guys later.
All right, thank you for having me.